You're listening to the Eat 'em Up Pod, your home for Detroit Tigers opinions, discussion, nonsense, and more. Now, here are your hosts, Jordan Hall and Alex Urban.
Is Jordan Hall, joined as always by the tailgate king of Detroit. It's Alex Urban. Alex, not only just the tailgate king of Detroit, but the tour king of Chicago this week.
Oh, Jordan, we had such a great time in the beautiful city of Chicago, going to the game at Wrigley. Couldn't have asked for better weather. I enjoyed the tour immensely, enjoyed hanging out with you and Whitney. We got to see the Dubs, so hats off to the listeners that encouraged me to do the tour. I did that earlier in the day, learned a lot of really interesting baseball facts. So me as a baseball nerd, I really, really enjoyed that. But it was tremendous. How have you been in the less than a week since I've seen you?
I've been very good. Before we move on from your tour, I thought there was a really interesting fact about what happens after games when the Cubs lose that I thought might be worthwhile sharing with the listeners.
Yeah, so you guys probably know the Cubs fly the W flag after a win. So if it's a home game and they have a home game the next day, they just let that bad boy fly overnight, and then they take it down maybe a couple hours before first pitch. But they also actually have an L flag for losses that they do put up, but it's only up for about 15 minutes after the final out. So I did get a video of it, and I got to say, that's pretty even. That's pretty biased or unbiased, excuse me, from our friends the Cubs over there. They take that L and literally display it.
Yeah, I think it's so funny. Like, I appreciate the accountability, but you don't actually have to fly any sort of L when you lose. So yeah, just stand up guys over there. I was super pumped when we were rolling out because as we were down the first base line, like basically right on the foul pole. And we actually had a pretty clear view of like the big old scoreboard. And we did get to see the L go up before we left, which was cool not only because it meant a Tigers win, but honestly, if you had told me that and I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I'm not sure I would have believed you. It's so weird and random, but yeah, it was cool to see.
It was one of those sports oddities. And I will tell you, I have nothing against the Cubs, just kind of not an organization I'd think about a ton. But if I was a Cubs hater, I would buy my own L flag and display
like
it.
Cards fans.
Yeah, if I was a Cards fan, I'd be all about that.
But yeah, it was a great time. I had been there, but it had been a long time ago. I think it was actually during COVID, which feels like a whole other lifetime ago. But yeah, it's cool. It's kind of got that same thing as Fenway. Just when you look out on that field, people have been playing in this spot for over 100 years, and like I don't know, it just does something to you trying to watch a game there.
Yeah, and real quick, going back to the tour, I got to give a shout out to my guy Ruben, the tour guide. There's just something about a tour guide who is very passionate about their craft, and Ruben had all of the answers for every questions. He was very spirited in terms of taking us on the tour. We got to go in the field, different parts of the stands, see a lot of different things. And one of the coolest things I learned, Jordan, and I think I mentioned this to you when we were there, but the term pennant chase. So if you guys can think of the Wrigley Field scoreboard, there's those pennant flags that fly above it. And those flags actually move up and down, and it's for the three National League divisions, NL West, Central, and East. And so, depending on where any of those teams are in the standings for the divisions, they go up and down. That's where the term pennant chase comes from. So, it's just a lot of cool little stuff. If you guys ever have the opportunity, highly recommend the tour. But yeah, my guy Ruben, I told him I was going to give a shout out, and here it is. He'll probably never hear this, but yeah, all the same. Great sandwich as well, by the way, but I digress.
All right, Alex, you ready to talk some ball?
Let's talk ball, Jordan.
So just before we started recording, we were discussing how we just saw each other like 5 days ago, and yet somehow it feels like the entire Tigers universe has changed. We saw each other for the game on Wednesday, so it was the last game of the Cubs series. Had just taken 2 of 3 there, followed it up with a couple wins against Kansas City, and man, we were flying high. And then those 2 eighth-inning losses to the Royals, I think you hit the nail right on the head here. It is who knew dropping 2 games out of 162 would really feel like the nail in the coffin. I think that's spot on. I think if those two games get closed out, I remember it was Summers who blew it in the second game. I can't remember the first game. I think if those two games get closed out, we are buyers at the deadline. And right now, as it stands, I think we're sellers. Which obviously we lost the first game of the Orioles series, but I think it was that razor thin of a margin, and these next couple days are going to be really interesting because of it.
What immense change in emotion we went from. I mean, they took 2 out of 3 in Anaheim, 2 out of 3 in Chicago. Take the first 2 out of 4 against a bad Royals team, and you're like, man, they're probably going to take 3 out of 4, and if we can get greedy, let's sweep them, and then let's bring in an O's team that's kind of beat up and banged too. And then all of a sudden, the air just completely is taken out of the room with those 2 losses. And I think for me, it kind of brought me back down to earth. This was always going to be a little bit of a far-fetched thing. And again, like, I'm a numbers guy, let's put it this way, in terms of the chase. Like, they're mathematically far from eliminated. They probably will not be eliminated until mid-September. So, sure, they can absolutely still make the playoffs. But in terms of my belief for them, 1, making it in my heart, and 2, actually making any kind of noise, it's just not there anymore. And I think there's too many holes on this team. I think they've masked some of the issues with some surprising play, some surprising power. The starting pitching has been tremendous, but the bullpen is what it is, and the defense is what it is, and the hitting or lack of hitting with runners in scoring position is what it is this season. So I'm firmly in the camp that they will sell next week. I'm not going to do parades over it. The one thing I'm getting a little frustrated with is people rooting for the team to lose. I'm never going to root for them to lose. This isn't 2019 where they're going after the number 1 overall pick. I want them to win the rest of the games. I want them to make the playoffs. But in terms of what is practical and pragmatic for this team to do, I think selling on Monday or in the days before is what makes the most sense for this club right now.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, we had this discussion going all the way back to the winter meetings. It probably, at the end of the day, is the right move to sell Scoopel if some of the packages that we've seen floated are realistic. Obviously, we don't know if that's the case. It could be journalists, floating out what they think is possible, but they could be right. It was probably always the prudent play. Now I think it's the right play. Like you say, there are a lot of holes in this team that, I mean, we'll get into it, but great starting pitching has papered over a lot of holes in the bullpen just because we've really been able to limit the amount of innings they've had to pitch. There have been some offensive inconsistencies that have largely been papered over by how many home runs we've hit over the last 2 months. It is not a team, as much as it's easy to get excited about, they had 8 runs when we rolled in here tonight. It's easy to get excited when the team is doing what they can to have kind of that more well-rounded performance. But there are so many games that one area or another is so lacking that while, as you mentioned, it is not mathematically impossible for them to come back, it's just practically impossible based on how many different areas of the team they need to essentially overcome. And I think we're unfortunately at that point. Now, as you so rightly mentioned, we've seen weirder stuff. Nobody would have said that Cleveland could have came back last year, and nobody would have said that we could have came back the year before. So, clearly we'll still be watching the games the rest of the year, but it just reaches a point where I don't think this team has the juice across the board to make noise in making the playoffs, let alone in doing anything once you get there, even with a Tarek Skubal on board. But yeah, we'll get into some more of the trade talk later. First, let's go back. The Royals series is a super bummer. Those first 2 games felt like a real shot in the arm. But man, dropping 2 of 3 with them missing both Bobby Witt and Michael Garcia. That's essentially why we're here.
Yeah, and the oddity too is whatever the statistic is of the number of games that are all 1-run games, decided by 1 runs. Excuse me, that was this forward, but they just couldn't get the big hit when they needed to. It was 6 out of 31. That's good for a 187 average with runners in scoring position in the series. and giving up the games in the 8th inning on back-to-back nights. And they weren't even bad pitches to Salvador Perez, which congratulations. I believe he is the leader for the Kansas City Royals home run. Great player, a lot of respect for him. And Max Muncy, that wasn't terrible, but you have to keep him in the park. And I think this is just a microcosm of how this season has largely gone. I know they've been playing good ball since June, but that gave me shades of May. And I do think this team is somewhere in the middle of what we saw in May and what we saw in the peak in June. I don't think they are a world beater, and I don't think they were the worst team in baseball. And that gets you to a very mediocre and average team, Jordan. And I think they kind of showed their true colors. I had put out a tweet from the show account that we have seen this before in previous years. In 2016, it came down to the wire. If you can remember, they went down to Atlanta and they had to win a series against some Braves, and they dropped that one. Obviously, we know what happened last year with the largest divisional collapse in MLB history. 2023, they lost 2 of 3 to an A's team in the middle of a playoff race that the A's would go on to lose 112 games. So we've talked about it a lot of times before. When this team is in the face of adversity, they just tend to wilt. And I felt like they probably felt the pressure in those last 2 games. And maybe this is just me forecasting something that's not there. But those were some really pivotal games in my mind that you had to take. Obviously, we feel like the season hinged on them. And for them to kind of blow it up and not be able to pull them out is it's a tough pill to swallow. But also it was a cold glass of water in my face in terms of reality. And I think that was needed.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, no disrespect to Kansas City, but it's not a great ball club that did that to us. You know what I mean? It's one thing if like the Dodgers or the Yanks come back and get us a couple games like that. But this is a well below 500 team missing essentially their only 2 good hitters. And we couldn't take care of business. And then you jump forward to the Orioles last night. And that's not the lineup you expect. Or I guess the production. It's most of the names. It's not the production you expect to see from the Orioles. Like, it's just not a very good team either. And to drop that one, especially against Kyle Bradish, looked like abnormally hittable last night. I mean, they tagged him pretty good, but it's not exactly the cream of the crop that they're struggling with right now. And these are the games that you absolutely have to make up ground in if that is the kind of thing that you're going to do. So there ends after the 1 o'clock game tomorrow, probably as you guys are listening to this or maybe slightly before. They have the day off, and then it's 3 with, I believe, the A's, and that will be the 3 data points that Scotty has before he makes his decision. That's it.
It's gonna be interesting to say the least. I mean, this trade deadline has more intrigue than I think we've had in many years, and there have been some really intriguing players on both sides coming in and going. The last 20 years, but. Obviously, you have a huge trade chip in Tarek Skubal, and that is the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room. Like, what is the decision they're going to make on them? If I can take a step back, though, Jordan, we've talked a lot in terms of the race for the playoffs on this team, in terms of games back, whether that's in the division or for the wild card. I have also been, personally keeping an eye on the 500 record, and that has been more important for me. They will officially, no matter what they do, even if they win out for the rest of these games, will be an under 500 team when the trade deadline rolls around on Monday. I don't know if you can buy as a team under 500 with all of the teams in front of you for the wild card and then thinking you have to chase down 2 teams for the division. Can it happen? Absolutely. Is it probable? No.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not buying, you have to sell. You know what I mean? Like, yes. Middle ground does absolutely nothing right now. So yeah, no, I agree. And I feel like that's actually a really good frame of reference because obviously, teams like Boston can go on crazy runs. Other teams can go on runs too. So it's hard to always track in terms of like games back, especially as you mentioned, being behind 1,000 teams in the wild card. But every time they start to flirt with that 500 number, eventually something happens, and you just can't make the playoffs. You actually might be able to this year, but most of the time you can't make the playoffs if you can't top that 500 mark. And yeah, it doesn't seem like I don't know. It's just a classic 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or even 2 steps back. Basically, the entire. Honestly, you know what it reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of the squirrel on the field last night. You know what I mean? I feel like
Yeah.
that has been the season for the last, I guess, all year. It's just back and forth. We can't quite get a handle on it. And then I guess keeping up the metaphor, at some point, somebody has to grab a towel and grab you and take you out, which is the trade deadline. Did I land that?
You nailed it. I love the metaphor, Jordan. Yeah. There's just and if I can give you one more, it's like a boat with a leak, and like a cartoon where the guy sticks his thumb in the one leak, and then there's a leak on the other side of the rowboat, and he's got his other finger in the other, and all of these leaks, just like you can try to patch them and you can try to get to shore, but they're sinking, and they're sinking quick. And they
you only have one
good
Cater
baseball.
Montero. Like, he can only fix one thing at a time, basically.
And I wasn't, honestly, he had a really rough outing his last time out, but I was not mad at Cater Montero. I mean, you can't expect him to go out and just be basically a Cy Young level pitcher every single. And we got to see him in Chicago, and he was tremendous. He was great, and he's had my praise in the entire season. But I think they were just relying on too many of the same faces and not getting enough production, which we're going to get into from a lot of the other guys that are role players. And frankly, Jordan, a lot of the guys who you can depend on have not been coming through when they need to on the offensive side of the ball. So I pulled some interesting stats that we're going to get into later in this episode.
All right. So let's play the blame game. I like what you have here. Let's play the blame game a little bit. Obviously, there is plenty of blame to go around. But why don't you take us through and examine some of the places that we can go ahead and put blame for where things have gone a little bit wrong this year.
All right. So I bucketed it out between the bullpen, the offense, and then the front office and management. The only caveat is I did not pull defensive numbers, but I think we all know that they are not capital N-O-T, a good defensive team this season. But defense is for nerds anyway.
That's
So
right.
let's start with the bullpen, Jordan, because the starting pitching has been immaculate for the most part, in my opinion. But the Tigers have lost 17 games when leading in the 7th inning or later. That leads the league, and the next closest teams were San Francisco and Washington at 14. The Tigers have more blown saves, 24, most in the American League, than saves this season in 21, Jordan. Kenley Jansen was brought in to be a stabilizing figure, the closer in the back of the bullpen. He's had mixed results, to put it politely. Will Vest died, and when you have guys like Drew Summers throwing leverage innings, I don't think you really have anyone back there. I don't think it's any kind of a stretch to say the bullpen has not been good. They've been anywhere from horrific to serviceable at times, but never good. But I did want to say, and I love this tweet from Chris Brown, Tigers Minor League Report, there's a lot of different ways for a bullpen to be good or bad, but never forget that baseball is also very stupid. He pulled comparison stats between the Tigers and the Texas Rangers. So the Tigers, very similar innings pitched, 389, Rangers 378. The Rangers have incredibly similar stats to the Tigers. The Tigers actually have a higher K percentage, slightly higher base on ball, same whip, Jordan, a lower home run over 9, and the ERA for the Tigers bullpen is 3.81, and the Rangers is 4.39. The FIP for the Tigers is 4.15, and the FIP for the Rangers is 4.19, Jordan. The Rangers have 31 saves to the Tigers 21. So we can look at metrics, we can look at numbers. Baseball is an oddity, but I also just think when push comes to shove, these guys have not gotten it done. And I know that's anecdotal. I know that's kind of feelings-based, but it's just how I feel. Anytime the Tigers have a close game going into the late innings, I am hanging on for dear life. And I think that, for me, is the story of the season in terms of the bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. If you take half of those blown saves, you're at 12 more wins. Like, the season is very, very different. Obviously, that would imply a very good bullpen, not a very bad bullpen, which, there's a hefty bit of difference there. But, yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. There are a lot of guys that I trust to kind of get some outs, but I would never trust to get big outs, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have problems with Drew Summers or your boy the Big Wagyu or my boy Drew Anderson. They're decent out-getters, but the fact that we would ever need any of those guys in like the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning is a tough shift. It's kind of not like how many outs you get, it's which outs you're getting, and we just don't have anybody that's suited to the back end. And honestly, I think that's maybe my, like, when I texted you, like, all right, I'm ready to sell, it was solely based on the fact that, say we get into the playoffs and Skubal gives us 7 good innings. Who are the other 6 outs coming from? I genuinely don't know. Maybe a starter that's been moved out to the bullpen. And if you can't trust that, like, what are we even doing here? And that implies, like, putting all of our guns going towards this, which you can't do over the course of 60-some games that are left for the regular season. Like, you can't do it every night. I don't, like, the bullpen takes so much crap. I don't necessarily want to add on to it. But an average bullpen, I think that we're probably, maybe not leading the division, but we're certainly in that mix. And I don't know that that's super arguable. So while there's plenty of blame to go around, a lot of it lands here for me.
And something that resonated with me that Chris Castellani tweeted about the other day is, you know, some of these guys have not earned the opportunity to throw some of these frames. They're just sticking them in leverage to see if they can get anything. But it's not like there is, in a traditional bullpen, you know, you would build up to those leverage spots and you would kind of earn your trust. Like they're kind of just mixing in whoever they have because they don't have any other opportunities. I know Kyle Finnegan's numbers are better than the eye test for sure, but you know he's had. I think that other shoe is coming, and we're on the eve of August, right? So maybe he's just going to have kind of a different season. Kenley Jansen scares the crap out of me, and then you know everyone else in my mind is a long reliever, and it doesn't matter who you have back there. There's just not the trust to get it done, and the numbers speak for themselves. And that's the bullpen, Jordan. Are we ready to get in the offense, or do you have any other points?
Definitely. No, I feel like we could probably go much, much longer on this. I don't think we should. I think everybody listening probably is well aware of what's going on out there. So let's move on.
All right. So I think a lot of people will argue that the offense is actually to blame for this season. I think it's been masked a little bit because of that crazy power surge where they hit the most home runs in franchise history in 1 month span. But it's so hot and cold, it's easy to think that they aren't the problem when they are. The Tigers are, Jordan, if you can believe it, 12th out of 15 teams in the AL in hits, 5th out of 15 in strikeouts, 12th out of 15 in average, 12th out of 15 in on base, 8th out of 15 in slugging, 10th out of 15 in OPS, and Jordan, they are dead last in Major League Baseball in stolen bases. Here's the biggest thing for me. They hit a lot of home runs, 4th in the American League, but they are 28th in baseball and 2nd to last in the American League with hits with runners in scoring position and dead last in the American League with RBI with runner in scoring position. So they might be getting, you know, they're middle of the pack for a lot of little stats, but when push comes to shove and they need the big hit with men on base, they have been terrible.
Yeah, and not to add on with more damning stats, but you know, we've all kind of thought like, oh man, this team is on like a generational run since June 1. Since June 1, they're 11th in baseball in runs scored. They're slightly above league average. That's it. They're behind Kansas City and the White Sox and the Twins and the Pirates and the Rockies and the Nats. Like, it feels like the team has just been on this offensive surge for the last better part of 2 months, and it, like, they're doing better than they did in May, but it is still all very relative. Yeah,
and it
right
feels like a lot of those nights are nights like tonight. Like they'll put up an 8 spot or a 10 spot or 11 spot, and we're cheering, we're going crazy, and then they go, you know, 4 games like they did against the Royals and scratch across 12 runs. The Royals have an incredibly hittable pitching staff. It's just the streakiness of this team led, in my opinion, by Riley Green, is a huge concern for me. Obviously, hitting with runners in scoring position is something that ebbs and flows on a season-by-season basis, but this team just doesn't have one player in particular with intestinal fortitude to get big hits when they need it. And something that Tigers Data tweeted, Jordan, that didn't shock me, but kind of just, I sat there and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. The Tigers' bottom third of the order, so the last three hitters in the order, is hitting 200 this season, dead last in all of baseball, Jordan. Their 604 OPS ranks 29th. And you've got, and this is guys like McKinstry, who has a 200 average with a 575 OPS, Matt Vierling with a 203 average, 576 OPS, Outman with a 161 average, a 514 OPS. It did include Jake Rogers, who got DFA'd today, but he did have a 161 average and a 576 OPS. These guys are all getting regular playing time on a night in, night out basis. It's just not a winning success. And, I do think there's a lot of things to like at the top of the lineup. Like, obviously, Kevin McGonigal looks like a dude. Like, he is looking like a perennial all-star. Same thing with Dylan Dingler. And as much as I like to, complain and moan about Riley Green's empty calorie stats, like, he is an all-star player if you're looking at the raw numbers. But then it just falls off a cliff after you get through some of those guys. And there needs to be some extreme roster turnover next season in my mind, but that is all part of this concoction about what has gone wrong. It's like these underlying numbers that continue to hold this team back.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, part of that is AJ trying to play the matchups. I mean, if you're trying to get like more or less full-time at-bats out of guys, like you don't have Vierling, McKinstry, all these guys on the roster. It also comes down to the fact that there's several guys that we planned on having as part of this lineup that just haven't been available. Obviously, Parker Meadows was the opening day center fielder. Javi has missed forever. Welcome back tonight, but he's missed forever. Even Wenzel, like, he hadn't lit the world on fire before he got hurt, but he was putting up better numbers than these guys. But you're right, there has been basically the bottom the bottom three has just been a complete albatross, more or less all season. A little bit less so with How You Lee hitting down there a little bit more. Javi will obviously help because he'll probably hit 7, 8, 9 most games. But yeah, like, not to be mean to these guys, but realistically speaking, you look at the names and you look at the numbers and you're like, yeah, like that kind of makes sense. I think it's more expecting them to not do that is a little bit crazy. And like, when you run out 3 of these guys basically every single game, the bottom of the order is going to suffer.
Yeah, and I'm not going to use injuries as an excuse, but James Outman is their third, if you want to say fourth string center fielder. Like, I believe Parker Meadows would have put at least up better numbers than this. I believe that Javier Baez would have put up slightly better numbers than this over the course of a full season. So a lot of these guys have been thrust into regular playing time that probably shouldn't have it. You know me, Zach McKinstry defender, but I've been very frustrated with the performance. I think he's the worst, all of the sudden, one of the worst base runners in baseball after being the Tigers' best for a couple seasons. I'm still going to make the argument that he's a good player, a last bench glove because of his versatility. But in terms of the way that the Tigers are using him, he's running you into outs consistently. I want Matt Vierling off of this team. I don't know why that player in particular is just stuck in my craw, but I just feel like he's not giving you anything right now. And James Outman was never supposed to be here this long. So
I'm shocked he still is here. Yeah.
Luckily, there's things coming in terms of minor league talent, and we probably are going to get some new faces at the trade deadline for one reason or the other. But you cannot carry that many guys with a sub 600 OPS and expect to really make any kind of a run. You just can't.
Yeah. It's a lot of guys with some very bad numbers, definitely.
Yeah. Can I talk to you a little bit about the management and front office, Jordan?
Yeah, please do.
All right, because no one is blameless in all of it. And a big caveat here is I celebrated a lot of what was done in the pitching side of the ball this offseason. I loved the Framber Valdez signing. I liked the Jansen signing at the time. I thought the Justin Verlander signing was serendipitous, and it's blown up as much in my face. So I'm not going to go off and point fingers when I can point it right back to myself. However, I am not the president of baseball operations. Let's start with Scott Harris.
Honestly, if only.
Scott Harris signed Framber Valdez, Kenley Jansen, and Justin Verlander as your headline free agents before the season. On the season so far, Jordan, Framber has a 4.53 ERA and a 1.38 WHIP, and honestly, it could be a lot worse than that. I think he's gotten bailed out and lucky in a couple of these outings. Framber, Jansen now 3.9 ERA, 1.23 WHIP, 12 out of 16 in save opportunities, has not been reliable. And then obviously Justin Verlander, one start and announcing his retirement following this season. That's the pitching side. Obviously, we talked about the bullpen earlier. He brought in Drew Anderson, Emmanuel De Jesus. Very mixed results from both of those guys, and otherwise it's been a lot of the same faces. 0 trades to improve the lineup for a second or third consecutive season. That's the thing that's really sticking out to me. It's like that right-handed bat that we have all said that they need, they continue to still need. And I know he's seeing the same things we are, but it just has not been addressed. And then A.J. Hinch, Jordan, and this is above my pay grade, but I'm just going to tell you guys my opinion. He's having his worst season as a Tigers manager. He's overly loyal to players like Vierling and McKinstry. The pinch hitting seasons have been bad and the worst in the league, statistically. Case in point, the other night when they had 2 on with 1 out and they needed to at least tie the game, Matt Vierling had 2 unsuccessful bunt attempts, and then he kind of lazily struck out in that pivotal at bat. Why is AJ asking for the bunt for a player that has 3 career attempts and over 1,800 plate appearances? It's just not who Matt Vierling is. If you're not going to pinch hit for Matt Vierling, which I think you should have anyway, at least just try to get him to hit a sac fly, because the one thing you couldn't have would be the strikeout in that situation. Everyone in the stadium knew the outcome of that at-bat before it happened. And then the pinch hitting Dingler with 2 outs, no one on in the inning before, I was screaming at my TV. I'm like, what are these managerial decisions? I understand he's just working with the players that he has at his disposal, but at the same time, none of these decisions are working, and it's working against the team objectively right now. So I'm going to go back to
he is. It just seems like he's throwing spaghetti up against the wall, and literally just none of it is sticking. I feel like recently it kind of just seems like he's like, I'm out of like my normal ideas. I'm just going to try some weird stuff. And yet the weird stuff doesn't super work either. But yeah, no, I agree. Keep going.
And again, it goes back to, and this is, kind of AJ and Scott Harris tied at the hip. What are we doing with some of these guys still on the roster? If every single game is a must win, and you are telling us publicly that it is because you're not sure if you're going to trade Tarek Skubal and you want to make a run at the playoffs, I want you to make a run at the playoffs. I'm buying into what you're selling me, at least right now. If every single game is a must win because of the hole you dug yourself into May, what are you doing with some of these guys still on the roster? Kerry Carpenter's a prime example. He has not hit a home run since late May. He obviously is not right now. The timing is off. Yeah. He's dealing with injuries, but you're continuing to force feed him at bats. Matt Vierling could be DFA'd and you could bring in any other major league outfielder and you would probably have better out. You need to have some urgency. This is the last season of a perennial Cy Young guy. This is a season where you spent a lot of money over the offseason. Why don't your actions in season match what we thought was at the beginning of the season? It's just continuing to try to get some of these guys going when it's clear that they don't have it. And if I was the manager or if I was the president, I would be trying different things and I'd be trying to catch lightning in a bottle, and I would not just run these guys into the ground, because I feel like they have now dug themselves into a hole that they officially, in my opinion, can't pull themselves out of. And that's where I'll leave it and turn it back over to you.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. There are a lot of guys in this roster that, like, I don't think their 40-man spot should be sacred. Obviously, to move somebody like Vierling or Jake, like we saw today, you have to DFA them and they won't stick around, almost certainly. Honestly, who cares? Like, I don't care if Vierling goes to another. If you, like you say, if the actions are going to match the words, there has to be like, it's not like there aren't guys at Toledo that you can make a case like, I don't know, maybe. We've seen that with Malgiri. I would argue that he should have seen more at bats over the course of the last month instead of Vierling. Valencia, obviously took way too long to get him up and into the lineup, especially considering how few right-handed bats we've had going. How Yu Lee, clearly he needs to be playing a decent amount more, especially after the deadline if we've more or less white flagged it. I agree. There is kind of that disconnect. And yeah, I do want to go back to Scotty. Like you mentioned, the off-season stuff. Hands up, I'm a huge Scott supporter. Largely, I mean, it's mostly just based on his draft and minor league credentials. But all of these moves, I was pretty keen on. Even Drew Anderson, but basically to a man, they've all not worked out. I'm not convinced that Fromber is a lost cause. But like it's clear there's clearly something wrong with him at this point. I suspect it's between the ears. I wonder if he's still grieving a little bit. And not to make excuses for him, but like you don't go down to another country and bury somebody like that and come back and be fine. He just looks a little like extra irritable to me, which considering I think he's got a bit of a reputation for that, like clearly not good. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, for 2026, that has been a fairly disastrous signing. Kenley, you mentioned he has a 3.90 ERA. Like, if you'd have told me that was 6, I'd be like, yeah, that tracks. Like, that is genuinely shocking to me that that's not way higher. It is a bloodbath. Verlander, like, is what it is. We clearly now have a thing for aging people with hip injuries. And like you mentioned, Anderson, Finnegan, and Manuel De Jesus, like none of those guys have really hit the ground running. I like them all in like limited roles. They've all essentially needed to kind of be closers at one point this year. So it's kind of that mismatch, but it hasn't been a banner year for management. I also get largely what management is trying to do. So it's kind of hard to I think it's a little hard to criticize them, but like at the end of the day, it is a results game. If you end up having 3 guys at the bottom of the order every night with an OPS less than 600, that is a GM issue. That is a manager issue too, in addition to being an issue of 3 not great hitters in the lineup every night. Yeah,
it's true. And again, I'm an AJ Hinch guy, you're an AJ Hinch guy, but I've been pondering recently is as much as we praise him for an X's and O's and in-game strategy guy, is he actually able to get the most out of his teams? Like I go back to, 2023 and I believe 2024. They've started so incredibly slow in those seasons. They really had to play catch up to get back. Obviously, they didn't make it in 23. 24 was that magical, gritty Tigers time. And then 2025, they absolutely sprint out of the gate. They're the first team to 20, 30, 40, 50, I believe 60 wins. And then they just fall apart and they couldn't pull themselves out of it. And they seeded the division and it was a historical thing. They're in the same position now. They needed to have a May where they just treaded water. And we said it, if you can just not completely go in the tank, this thing is still all of your goals are still in front of you in terms of what you said before the season, right after Tarek Skubal got hurt. And what happened? They just floundered. And I get it. It wasn't just Tarek Skubal that went down. But at some point, you have to look at the manager and be like, hey, it's not like you lost the entirety of your lineup and you're calling up your AA squad. You still got some major leaguers here. And I just wonder if he's getting the most out of this club right now. I venture to say no, just based on their record and based on some of the style of play. And that's a conversation for a different day. I'm not calling for his firing. I know a lot of people are, but certainly more critical of AJ Hinch this season than I have been in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with managers, it's always like, is he better than the guy that you like question mark that you'd be replacing him with? And I do think the answer is definitively yes. But as much as we, were all over him for the better part of the last 2-3 years, like it does require a little accountability. Like it hasn't been a good season for him this year. That being said, I would be devastated if he wasn't the manager next year. So, perspective.
Indeed. All right, Jordan. So I've laid out the case for you. Bullpen, offense, front office / management. If you had to assign blame to one of these three and say this grouping, obviously all three are to blame for everything in some way, but if you were going to put the onus on one of these three, what is your choice?
Bullpen. I think everything can be wrong with both the management and the line. Well, maybe not quite everything with the lineup, but if the bullpen is top 10 in baseball in terms of just quality, like not ERA, but actually quality instead of bottom 10, I think that we are potentially leading the division, and we're having less conversations like this. So, yeah, I'm going to go bullpen. Where do you land?
I'm the same. Yeah, I think that. Again, I think it's the story of the season. 24 blown saves. Let's cut that in half. If you didn't blow 12 of those saves, which I know is asking a lot and it's revisionist history, but let's just say you would be an above 500 ball club. You would be right there in the division, and you'd be right there in the wild card. And I fully believe that you would be a buyer, and we would be jumping up and down and feel entirely different.
Yep.
The bullpen sunk this season. It did. They didn't have the horses, and the guys that they did have just every button that was pressed turned into a nuclear bomb in a lot of ways, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely.
So. All right, Jordan. Well, all of that said, I think we are preparing ourselves, obviously, for the exit of Tarek Skubal. It is certainly going to happen at the end of the season, if not sooner. But let's get into it. The trade deadline is at 5 p.m. on Monday. Time to plant our flags, because the next time we talk will be post-deadline. Maybe we'll do an emergency episode on Monday night after the trade deadline is passed, or maybe we'll do our regular thing on Tuesday. But what are our predictions for the players that we believe to be traded, which are the likes of Tarek Skubal, Casey Mize, Gleyber Torres, throw in Finnegan if you'd like, or any other, probably 1-year rental players. Where is your head with the trade deadline right now?
All right, I'm going to plant my flag here. I think he tries to do the sell and buy thing. I think he tries to go halfway. I don't think it works, but I think that's what he tries to do. In my opinion, if we're trading Skubal, you need to be maximizing every available asset. If you're keeping Skubal, you probably have to get reckless and do something stupid, like go get 3 bullpen arms, or I don't know, a big bat or something. I think he tries to sell Skubal, keep Mize and Flaherty, and tries to go full Rafael Montero, Finnegan, Paul Sewald again. I think that's what he tries to do. I don't want that to be the case, but I think that's what he does.
It's jazzy, Jordan. It's very
Is it?
interesting.
I think it's a terrible idea.
Oh, but it's interesting. I agree that I would be sick if that happened, but it's interesting. I'm going to go in a different direction. I think they keep Tarek Skubal, but they trade Mize, Torres, Flaherty, anybody really that gets any kind of interest, and they market that, one, they are going for it, and absolutely they still could. But 2, I think the comp pick is going to be something that they're and again, I'm a believer that it's not nothing. People continue to say you got to trade Tarek Skubal or you're going to let him walk for nothing. The comp pick is probably going to be at the end of the first round. Is it a compensation prize, for that none of us ever wanted? Of course it is. But the best offensive player on your team right now was a comp pick in Kevin McGonigal. So let's not pretend like he's literally walking for nothing. Now, is that what I want to happen? No. I think you could probably net at least one top 100 prospect by trading him. And I think it's the prudent thing to do. And I think the prudent thing to do, honestly, is probably trade anybody that garners any kind of interest in terms of these rental guys. I'm not trading McGonigal, Dingler, Melton, Montero,
Riley, even.
Not Riley. But any of these guys that are pending free agents, I'm at least listening on. I don't know if Scott Harris has the stones to get this done in terms of the Tarek Skubal move. His track record in previous trade deadlines is not great. He consistently wants to wait until the very last second to be the kid with the best Pokemon card at the playground, and he's, people are lining up for it, and it doesn't always work great. So I have a feeling that, ultimately he's not going to have his asking price met for Tarek Skubal. I mean, the news reports say that the other general managers think he's very difficult to negotiate with, and he does not move off his principle. And we've said before, that's both a good thing and a bad thing. But ultimately, I think he's going to try to ask for the world, and those asking prices aren't necessarily going to materialize, and he's going to say, fine, we'll hang on to the guy. And then everyone, and I'm going to say this right now, everyone is going to be furious no matter what happens. Like, if they trade Skubal, the return is going to be too light. If they don't trade Tarek Skubal, people are going to say it's malfeasance. If, they bring in and buy, like you said, people are going to say the guys that they brought in are absolute garbage. And if they don't, turn into second half all-stars, if you will, they're going to be terrible. I'm going to take a very measured approach. At least I'm going to try to. But I am so nervous for how this is going to go because I have no idea in which direction they're going to go.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit with what you say. I believe it was I think it was Passan today, put out one of his pieces that basically was suggesting. No, I think it was Ken Rosenthal, basically suggesting that at the moment Harris seems to want his trade partners to essentially not leave anyone off the table. If that is his attitude, we're going to be stuck with him. Like that is just how that's going to end. That has to change. There is no way that Milwaukee has given up Made for him. Like, it just isn't going to happen. The Dodgers aren't going to give us Josue DePaula. I would love to be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. It's just a matter of you need to figure out what you can actually get, and if it's better than that. Like, I look at the Dodgers, for example. If they're willing to give you Zaire Hope and Emmett Sheehan, I feel like that's the one that's been everywhere. If that's the case, that is nice. I think Hope is going to be a nice player. Sheehan can plug right into the rotation. That's better than a comp pick. If it's too awfully much less than that, like, comp picks aren't nothing. It just depends on what's out there. And the thing that I might be most interested for is how forthcoming Scotty will be afterwards with what the options were like. I think we know him well enough to suggest that he's probably not going to be overly talkative on the subject, but I don't know. I think that people are overestimating what this return is going to be. It would be awesome if it was kind of that generational haul, but I think if we can get two pieces that look like they can fit into the future, that will be something probably to be celebrated. And at that point, it's worth it to me.
For me, Jordan, they just have to come out of the Tarek Skubal trade, assuming they do trade him, with one guy that you can really hang your hat on that can be a part of this future. I'm really not interested in 250 grade prospects from like the Phillies system. And I'm not interested in flyers. And I do think the return is going to be less than a lot of people think. I saw someone tweeted earlier today. He was described as a generational trade chip. He is not netting the same return as like they would have 2 years ago, even in a seller's market. And
potentially even in the winter meetings. Yeah.
Yeah. The Dodgers are flush with top 100 prospects, but top 100 prospects don't always nut out. I mean, I look at it. I don't know if Dylan Dingler was ever a top 100 prospect. You know who was at one point number 3 overall and was a can't miss and was graded 70 grade power? Spencer Torkelson, right? So like,
poor Tork.
And that's not a diss on the guy. It's just to show the comparison of like, a lot of these guys can have the prospect glimmer and have, the can't miss label, and then they come up and they're very average players. And you can have a guy that, might be under the radar and do really well. I don't know what they're going to get. But I do know if they just kind of take some underwhelming prospects like they did in previous deadlines, it's going to be disappointing for a lot of people and underwhelming for a lot of people, which makes me not envy Scott Harris's position, because at that point you got to weigh, is the comp pick worth more than what you're going to get. I don't think it is. I think they can get more out of trading him than the comp pick is worth. But again, I'm not having these same conversations. I'm not at the negotiating table. I'm sure if we could listen into some of these conversations, we're like, yeah, pull the trigger on that one. And they would tell us why they couldn't. But it's a long-winded answer, Jordan, of saying like, this is going to be crazy. And on August 4th, I think our heads are going to be spinning for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. So I would like to give us some perspective that hopefully we remember that it can't really go worse. So I was looking today at two of the more notable rental chips that we've traded. So we traded Justin Verlander to the Houston Astros. You guys may remember that. It worked out well for them. For us, we received 3 players that totaled 1.8 career WAR in Detroit. That being Franklin Perez, who obviously never made it, Jake Rogers, and Daz Cameron. 1.8. It gets worse. The J.D. Martinez trade is much lauded.
Don't say his name to me.
That year, we sent him to Arizona for 3 players, one of which never made the big leagues, one of which is, I think, still kicking around in Sergio Alcantara. But cumulatively, we got a career negative 1.2 WAR from those 3 guys in Detroit. So I'm not saying it can't be worse, but the odds of it being worse aren't real high. So we'll probably do better than that.
God, I hope so, Jordan. I mean, I was thinking about, and I think we all knew that the JD trade was bad.
Yeah.
You know, it was dead upon arrival. But, you know, we had some big hopes for Franklin Perez, and it sucks that the injuries kind of took him. But, yeah, Daz Cameron and Jake Rogers for one of the best pitchers in the game, even at that time, even though I'm not going to get into that part of it, but you're absolutely right. You never know what you're going to get out of these trades, but we're hoping that it nets something better than it has in the past, because their track record on the other end of these deals has not been great.
Not been great.
All right, Jordan, anything else on the deadline? We're running a little long tonight, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot popping up over the next couple of days.
I don't think so. Yeah, no, I think we can move on.
Right. Do you have a Tiger King crown to give away for this week?
I do, and it actually changed a little bit after tonight because the man was so dominant on the mound. This week, I'm giving mine to Troy Melton. Since the last time we recorded, he's had several starts, but since last week when we would have recorded, he's made 2 starts, through a total of 12 innings, 2 runs over the course, 10 strikeouts. I don't know, for whatever reason, I kind of keep thinking, like, you know, he doesn't have the same pedigree. The stuff is really good, but like you kind of get in the prospect mold. Like, he was never a top 100 guy. You assume that like eventually it will wear off. He just continues to go out there and look filthy basically every time out. And at some point, he's just a very good starting pitcher. And I will say, if it is kind of a white flag situation after the deadline, being able to closely monitor his innings down the stretch as opposed to needing him to turn in great starts every 5th day isn't the worst thing. But he was dynamite tonight. He was so good. So that's my Tiger King for the week.
He's been fun to watch, Jordan. I think that's a great pick. And I'm penciling him in very prematurely, mind you, but as the ace of the squad next season. I think he is.
It's hard to argue against now. Yeah.
And that, I believe, is his first crown of the season.
Oh. His ERA currently sits at 1.75 on the season.
Do you think he has a shot at the Cy Young, which does not have a innings minimum, by the way?
I think he needs a little bit more, too many more appearances. Also, Dylan Cease has been really good, so it's not like it's one of those years where there's not a like somebody who's earned it. But it's an interesting shout. I would say maybe like inning for inning, he's certainly up there with the best in the AL, which, attaboy Troy.
I think he gets a vote. Maybe like a third place vote, but I would take that all day. But I agree. He probably just doesn't have the resume this season after the injury. My crown this week, Jordan, goes to one Hao-Yu Lee, who hit a big 3-run Jimmy Jack when we were in Chicago. That was beautiful to see. This is from July 25th. Just Baseball tweeted it out, so the numbers are slightly updated. But in 31 games since being recalled on June 13th, he is hitting .341. That's 31 for 91 with 6 doubles, 4 home runs. that is good for a 907 OPS and a 150 OPS plus. As you guys know, 100 OPS plus is league average. He's been a big reason for that success and surge, and he's been a guy that, we talk about not being able to get hits in big moments. He has been a guy that they've been able to rely on, and I like the way the kid swings. I don't like his defense. But I am curious if they might be thinking he might be your starting second baseman in 2027.
I think that's one of the big things, again, especially if they do sell off at the deadline. You have to go into 2027 knowing if he is your starting second baseman. I think you have to give him basically all of the at-bats you possibly can to find out if that is in fact true. Hopefully it is, but you want to see what he does against all kinds of pitchers. I know AJ's kind of been picking his spots with him recently, but you can't do that with 9 guys in the line. You have to run some guys out there all the time. So we need to figure out if he's the dude. He might be.
That's right.
And again, I thought Willie Castro was the dude too, and so who knows?
He carved out a respectable career.
Yeah, definitely.
He did some things. He was an all-star at one point.
I mean, Zach McKinstry is an all-star, but sorry, I'm testing tonight.
As you should be. All right, Jordan, weekly preview time. They finish the series tomorrow against the O's. It's a 1:10 first pitch, and then they go out to Sacramento to play the A's. So over the next 4 games, and they have Monday, the trade deadline day, off before they start a series with Seattle. Over these next 4, so Orioles and the 3 with the A's, what is your record prediction?
I think they do the thing that is least helpful. I think they go 2-2.
Yeah, that's probably spot on. Give me 3-1 just to aggravate all of us as we head into the deadline.
I do want to say one thing about this weekly preview. I know most people don't really have this option, but tomorrow, 1:10 p.m., unless something happens, Scooble will almost certainly throw for the last time in a Tigers uniform. If you have the chance, I don't know, just enjoy it one time. Maybe watch the game without your phone. This is a absolutely generational player that we will unfortunately have to watch win many, many things, hopefully for him, with somebody else. Just enjoy it one more time in the right uniform. But that's my plan. But yeah, I know many people can't just step away from their job at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday. Maybe throw an earbud in. See how Dan is describing. Dan's going to be at his poetic best tomorrow.
I think that's a great point, Jordan. I'm going to be watching, and I encourage you all listening, if you have an opportunity to watch this, think about how we felt when Justin Verlander signed with the Tigers. And this is a long roundabout way that I'm going to get to my point. We were super pumped up because it immediately brought back the memories of how good he was in a Tigers uniform. Tarek Skubal has been one of the best pitchers the Tigers organization has ever had. One of the best they've had since 1901, 125 years. Tomorrow very likely is his last start in your team's uniform. Just enjoy it. Try to throw out the trade deadline talk stuff. Try to throw out the frustrations. If you're still clinging on to that start in Seattle that he had in the playoffs, just let it go. Just try to enjoy the moment. I know there's a lot of people think he shouldn't pitch, and that's a conversation that can be had, but he's probably going to. And let's just hope that he can mow down some of these guys. I mean, it would be very underwhelming if he just got rocked, but I do not think that is going to happen. So let's enjoy one more Scooble start in the Old English D, and I thank him for his service because he has just been tremendous for us.
It's also nice that it's at home. I'm really glad it's at home.
If I had more PTO, I'd take the day off and I'd go down there.
I considered. It's just too far.
Yeah, I'll get you. Are you ready to go down on the farm, Jordan?
Let's do it.
All right. Somewhat of the forgotten prince, Max Anderson, Jordan. Since June 1st, that's 41 games. He is hitting .319, 397 on base, and a .530 slugging. He's always been aggressive. He's never, I believe this is from Tigers Minor League Report, never collected more than 9 walks in any 1 month of his pro career until now.
What a stat.
He has 13 walks and 81 plate appearances this July, good for a 16% walk rate. So
I ain't even over. Look at you go, Max.
Yeah, he's starting. I do think it's a little curious that he hasn't got the call yet. I know Howie Lee's been hitting a hot stick, and Anderson largely only plays second base, but I mean, this kid's done everything they've asked him at every level, so he's got to be close, or we're never going to see him at all.
Yeah, I wonder if Glaber ends up going, if that's when he gets the call.
Yeah, that's a good.
I could also see. So we discussed this in Chicago. There's also the draft pick that you get for winning the rookie of the year, which we'll probably get with McGonigal, and you know how much Scotty loves draft picks. I wonder if Max and Max they're keeping them down. I think I read somewhere, and I apologize to whoever put this out, that after August 15th you can bring them up, and they don't necessarily have to worry about distinguishing their prospect eligibility for next year. So I wonder if Scotty's trying to double fist his chances at that next year with the two maxes. I don't know, but yeah, he's put in plenty good of a year to have been promoted at some point. It just hasn't happened. I got to imagine it happens sooner rather than later, especially once that 15th deadline hits. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think there's something to it. I think we will see both maxes after the deadline at some point. The only other guy I wanted to talk about this week is left-handed pitcher Ben Jacobs. Jordan, he has shot up prospect list according to MLB Pipeline, which take it with a grain of salt, but is very accessible. He is now ranked number 5 for the Tigers' top 30. He is the highest-ranked pitching prospect, likely until Fluky, the first-round draft pick, is added to these lists. Mr. Jacobs is a third-round pick in 2025, number 98 overall. On the 20/80 sliding scale, his fastball is rated to 55, so that's above average. Slider, 55, above average. Changeup, 55, above average. His control is a 45, which is a little concerning. An overall 50 grade prospect. He struggled the last month at high A, and the numbers aren't very good. He's got a 6.75 ERA and a 1.83 WHIP. But he's got great strikeout numbers, chase rate, and whiff rates, and I know a lot of our friends in the prospect beat like this kid very much. So keep an eye on Ben Jacobs, who is with the West Michigan Whitecaps right now. He is shooting up the prospects list and could honestly enter top 100 territory here, possibly soon.
Yeah, and it's so important that some of these pitchers start popping. Like there's a dearth of high level talent that it's him I don't want to say coming out of nowhere. He was a third round pick, but maybe overperforming his draft stats, draft slot to shoot up the prospect rankings. This is what we need. So good job, Ben.
Indeed. Ready to get into some listener questions, Jordan?
Let's do it.
All right. Mediocre Midwest Dad, a.k.a. Shawnee Pat in the Hat on Twitter, wants to know, you are co-GMs for a day, assuming the packages we think exist from the Dodgers, the Brewers, and the Braves. Which one do we like most for Scooble? Which one are we taking? So I'm not super familiar with all of the prospects and other teams. I know a few. Milwaukee, he's got Fisher, Letson, and likely probably not Mate. They're not getting Jesus Mate in any kind of trade.
It'd be sweet, but
it would. I would do a 1-1 for Tarek Skubal and Casey Mize for Jesus Mate, if that was on.
Yeah, I mean, I think by definition that'd be a 2-for-1. But yeah, I agree.
Math. You're right.
Math's for nerds. Yeah, just like defense.
So the Dodgers, he's got here Sheehan, River Ryan, Hope, Sirota, DePaula. 3 of those 5. Also, don't think you're getting Josue DePaula, who's the number 2 prospect ranked in all of baseball. Sirota is also very high. I think he's top 20. And then he's got from the Braves Richie, South Sinine, Kennedy, and Gill. For that, I'm probably taking the Dodgers. River Ryan does not much for me. I think he's like a 28-year-old prospect, so he's getting old in the tooth. But yeah, if they could get Mike Sirota from the Dodgers, I'd be into that. He's an above-average hitter. He's got above-average power, above-average defense. He's a double-A hitter. That would excite me quite a bit. How about you from this list, Jordan?
No, same. I think you're kind of banking on the Dodgers wanting to dunk on people, which is usually a fair bet. But honestly, you could close your eyes and throw a dart and hit a prospect worth trading him for in that organization. So, yeah, if they could get Sirota and Sheehan, Hope and Sheehan, yeah, I'm all in. I think the Braves names are interesting. I don't know that there's any one guy there that I'm like, oh yeah, like this is a guy we're gonna look back at. But if they're able to get like 3 of those names, I'd be interested in that. I could also see them being a match for Casey Mize, like maybe 1-for-1, something like that with like Caminiti or J.R. Ritchie. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting with the Brewers being a small market team that's kind of always around like they are. You would think at some point you would just want to be like, we're never gonna have a better situation than this. Let's like push the chips in, and maybe they get aggressive. But I think they're too stingy to give us actually something that would be helpful, unless like Henderson enter the picture, in which case things change a little. But I don't think it's probably worth it for them to move him, considering he is already a good starting pitcher for, obviously Scooble's better, but so yeah, I agree. Dodgers. If I were making the line, I would definitely make them favorites. Not a betting podcast.
Not a betting podcast. Litzner on Twitter wants to know: has our confidence in AJ Hinch's in-game decision making wavered?
I would say yeah. I don't know that I ever necessarily thought that like it's not true actually. I was gonna say I feel like motivation and kind of the shrink angle of the game is, but I'm just rambling here. I don't think it has. I think some of the bench weapons that he's typically been able to rely on have been just terrible this year, and sometimes it just doesn't come off. I feel like I've said this 100 times this year. I think managers probably get too much credit when they win and take too much blame when they lose. And overall, I don't know. I would put him at a solid, 60 out of 80 in terms of in-game decision making. Probably where I would have had him before the year. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I think you hit it square in the head. And then finally, Andrew on Twitter wants to know: when Clark is hopefully called up next month, do we think Veerling will be DFA'd? He said should have Baez back at that point. Javier Baez back today, which is a nice sight to see. I never thought I'd hear myself saying that. I'm just going to ask this question. Does Matt Veerling finish the season with the Tigers? I am going to say no. My heart tells me yes, but I'm going to believe that. I think in this series of trades, they are going to bring back prospects, but they're also going to bring back like a Trey Sweeney-esque player that they're going to take a flyer on, and is like, he's a fringe major leaguer to the point where they're just going to call him up to see what they have. So that could be an outfielder, and I think Matt Veerling's days are numbers. I will be very disappointed if he is on the team next year. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think he is on the team because obviously you got to get to past the deadline, and I agree. I think there could be plenty of shuffling like after the deadline, but if he makes it through that scuffle, I mean, he's got 30 days until rosters open up, and at that point, like, who cares if he sticks around? So for that reason, I'm going to go with yes. That being said, like, DFA him, DFA Outman, I don't really care. I'm good with either of those guys. Outman has done fine for him. I think we knew what we were getting when we signed him, and it's largely been what we've gotten. That being said, I have no problems DFAing either of them. So,
yeah, same, Jordan. And I will say we talked about the numbers earlier. I still think for what they got out of James Outman is more than any of us were expecting.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, I would have been surprised if he made it a couple weeks, and he's made it a couple months. Indeed. What a world.
What a world. Thank you, gentlemen, for those questions. Jordan, that is it for this week's episode. Anything for the good of the order before we sign off tonight?
I don't know. Just buckle up, everybody. This next week is going to be, I think I can't remember your exact phrasing, but this is going to be the most emotional week of the season, and I think we all need to be ready for it. And we're all my only prediction is by the time you and I record again, we're all going to be pissed. Everyone.
Well said, Jordan. Well, thank you, listeners. As always, I saw the Twitter sphere. A few people were going to possibly check us out for the first time, so I hope you enjoyed the pod.
Hey, welcome.
We are usually much more positive than this, but
Yeah,
we try to call a spade a spade. So appreciate you guys listening always. Jordan, always great to catch up with you. Truly had a tremendous time with you and your beautiful wife over in Chicago. Need to do that more often. So if you guys want to follow along on the socials, we are at Eat 'em Up Pod across all the platforms. I am at aurban91. Jordan's at hosted by Jay Hall. If you got listener feedback, you want to suggest an episode, you want us to give somebody a shout out on the show, eatemuppod@gmail.com. New episodes every Wednesday. We would be tickled pink if you would subscribe and give us a 5-star review. It's been a minute since we've had a 5-star review or a review of any kind. So tell us what you like about the show. Tell us what you don't like about the show. And on behalf of Jordan Hall, I'm Alex Urban. So go Tigers.
Go Tigers.